Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, yes, you get to see Mark very soon. Oh, yeah, let's go ahead then. Mark.
Good morning from Abuja. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, yes, indeed. We've got Mr. Steve Monsu joining us this morning. Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, same to you from here. Happy New Year to Nigeria. It's quite an age.
Are you looking forward to... You have to look forward to...
We have no choice. We have no choice. We have no choice. There's no alternative. As one of my lecturers will say, it's either or. There's no alternative.
You have to find a way somehow to insulate yourself from whatever may not let you look forward to some of those good things. However, the impediments may be.
Whatever, you just have to find somewhere, a comfort area. Somehow, above everything, overlook everything.
Unfortunately, newsmen like us can't insulate ourselves from the news.
No. You can't insulate. You report, but don't get too carried. You don't get
That's the key point. That's the key word.
Just report it as a professional.
And get to move on. Yeah. So
how easy it sounds. I don't want to go there.
Oh dear. Okay, let's start off with the Vanguard newspaper today. Well, they're talking about 2023
Already.
Well, even last year. We were talking about it last year.
As soon as Buhari won re-election, we started talking of 2023.
There you go. And then it says APC, PDP echelons a buzz over Jonathan's moves. Why speculations of Jonathan joining APC won't end soon. Former president not contemplating joining ruling party, ascribed to the PDP. Jonathan didn't hold any consultative meeting over 2023, ascribed to his aide. Don't leave PDP. PGFDG wants Jonathan. Quite a lot there.
It's his call. It's his call. The belief in certain circles is that Jonathan is still in PDP, his wife is already in APC, and they are still weighing him, and his friends say they will invite you, bring you to APC and mess you up and all that. All kinds of permutations are going on. And it's also good for the APC if he can come there. At least that's one problem less. Whatever value he has to add to the PDP. But if you ask me, former president, remain in your former party. There's no, unless, even if I don't see him getting the ticket if he goes to APC. That's my gut feeling. But then,
even if, but you know, some of these things, if they move, it's not just a move, as it were, because there would have been a lot of discussions.
All this going to villa here and there all the time. People are beginning to suspect, say that he's frequenting the villa too regularly for it to be for nothing. Of course, there'll be promises. Is when you get there, you don't cross the bridge until you get to it. There will be promises. Is when you suddenly get there, you discover that, well, it's no longer possible. There have been political promises that were made to other people, and somewhere along the line they discover it's not workable any longer, and it'll be too late to go back.
Well, from politics to the economy, I know we're looking forward to a good 2022, but look at what's above this lead story. Widespread cash supply shortage persists in banks. And the writers, one of which says, cash shortage worse than COVID-19, ascribed to Babalola. We don't have cash in the last few days, banker. Banks managing their deposits, analyst, and CBN should reduce CRR debits to banks. This is ascribed to analysts. What do you think is going on there now?
I can understand, but all I notice is that getting money out of the banks during the holidays, even the platforms themselves too, were even particularly problematic to make transfer. I did so many. They said, look, you can't. I just first attempt at my ATM card, and I was told that I had exceeded the number of trials I was supposed. I'm supposed to give you 3 chances, even if you made a mistake. Just the first punch, they said I had exceeded, and I tried everything. Said I have to get to the bank, and that was that. So I couldn't use any of those 2 ATMs for a particular bank throughout this holiday now. And then you go to the bank, the kind of rotten in these times of COVID, the kind of notes they give you, you'll be sure you just see COVID walking on 4 legs, the rotten notes. But so I guess there's something up there. I don't know what it is. But
Could it be a way of trying to
curtail our spending?
compel electronic transactions?
Beg inflation. Well, if it's to come, I just told you that I couldn't do electronic transactions.
Frustrating electronic transactions.
It's been frustrated. So you go to ATMs and you'll be there most of the time. There was a particular one, a particular bank, the ATM of that particular bank in front of the bank, that Lekki area, about 4 of them. No, only one was dispensing. After paying about 2-3 people, said couldn't dispense cash again, and you just keep. And I just don't know. As if there's a game they're playing. I don't know.
Well, this at the bottom strip says again, no sit at home in Southeast. Human and vehicular movement unhindered. Flight operations maintained as police gunned down one suspected ESM member, many injured. So, is it that they were expecting more sit at home this time around?
It's been, because of this this division in the IPOP thing. Some say there's sit at home, some say there's no sit at home. But the biggest drama was what they said at the weekend, that they will no longer allow people to use the Nigerian schools to recite the Nigerian national anthem, that they will have to revert to the Biafran anthem, and then the cows reared by Fulanis will no longer be used for occasions in the Southeast, and there are so many things they said there. My fear is that it sounds laughable, but knowing what the security situation is, even if you say you don't want to flow with what they're saying, chances are that the state does not even have the capacity to ensure your own security. That's what is actually making the sit at home and all that, that's making it very somehow effective, because if you want to go out, the police can't protect you. So, yeah. So
don't you think there is a need for further communication with various interest groups so that we can allay such fears as this one and some of the issues that you have raised?
It's been going on. The issue is not about communication. The truth is that apart from this, do I say, tagging of the entire area, the people are well informed. A lot of people are not comfortable with what is happening here. The information is out there. The problem is people are not obeying because they want to obey. They are obeying because that's the only way to survive.
That's the point that I'm making. Because if these elements they continue to do what they're doing without engaging them, the fears are not going to abate.
Who do you want to engage now? The people or the elements that don't want to be engaged?
Very interesting.
Well, don't forget to check out the back page of Vanguard, the African Cup of Nations. It's going to make the rounds very soon. So that is Vanguard today. If you want to check out Mr. and Mrs., you can always do that.
Yes,
I was going to protest.
We're always scared to check that.
I was going to protest. The Daily Independent newspaper this morning is also talking politics on its lead story. Southern governors divided on zoning 2023 presidency. That's what you have on the front page. It continues on the inside pages. Divided? I thought this was, I don't know, cut and dry.
It's divided in the sense that yes, it's not a done deal that the parties will zone to the south. And then when you zone to the south, then there's a division, which of the south? The southeast says it's us. The southwest said, we have given so much to this party, we should take it and all that. So it's till the candidate in mind, that division will be there.
Interesting.
And you see governors and every person laying all kinds of claims, subtle movements and all that. You see, some have been traveling all over the country and all those kind suddenly. So it's okay.
It's 2022. All right, under the picture you see there of a fun park in Abuja, April deadline, PFAs may shrink to 15 post-pension industry recapitalization. So much talk about this pension thing.
Well, I think my only happiness is it's we are all talking about contributory pension. That is my only compensation. I'm proud to say I'm a pensioner, as it were, and I get mine regularly. Is contributory. The important thing is that just make sure that my fear with the pension thing is this issue of government wants to borrow the money. This one wants that money. There must not be any story about it. If they like, they can be 5 or 6 or whatever. If they need pruning, if they want to do consolidation like solidarity with the banks, it's all welcome. But nothing must happen to the pensioners' money, because that is where the problem is. Because there are very many people, that's the only safety net they have left, because there's nothing the government is doing to protect.
I think they were talking about actually raising funds with the pension funds domiciled there. So we'll double check if they haven't already, actually.
That's the Daily Independent this morning, Malcolm.
Well, let's take a look at some of the papers we have here. Leadership has this one. Pressure mounts on APC leaders to shift national convention. Page 4, read there. Postpone convention, ruin your legacy. PGFDG tells Buni, says APC playing into PDP's hands. Selfish personal interest must not override party's interests. That's from Obahiagbon. So you'll find all the details on page 4 of the paper. I don't know what you make of this APC's convention. Initially, there were talks that it was going to hold in December. Then much later, we heard, okay, it's been moved to this year, February this year. They didn't pick a date, but looks like now even February is shaky. What are your thoughts with regards to this upcoming APC convention, which must happen, by the way?
I think there's with the APC, I think it's a question of trying to get, there's really that division among, you see, there was the youth group saying that some people are trying to delay and corner the tickets and all that. So they said they wanted to even crash everything together, that both the same convention will produce both the party officers and the presidential candidate and all that. I think the APC basically needs to put its house in order there and just do what you need to do, not necessarily looking at where PDP is going. You know, each time before it was, let's see when PDP will hold, you keep adjusting, watching the other guy. Yes, it's politics. You need to keep tab of what is happening in the opposition, but at least put certain basic things. Before you know it, you will run out of time, and before you know it now, they will have run into another technical situation where maybe the convention itself will become null and void, and it will turn out that you go into an election and suddenly discover that you really don't have a candidate, like what happened in Anambra. I'm just scared for APC. I think they should put their acts in order. Very selfish and the selfish interest. First of all, get the party together. Throw these things open. This idea of trying to manipulate, you have a convention.
Is consensus manipulation?
You have a convention, but you don't. How do I say? Nigerians politicians like to occupy public office, but they don't want to go through the process that produces you hate election, but you want to occupy public office. It's like what Aikwama spoke about the chichi dodo bird. You live on worms, but you abhor the excreta on which the worms grow. And that's just, I think the APC needs to put its house in order to at least give us the kind of show leadership, as it were, and not wanting to manipulate everything. There are certain things you can manipulate some and leave the rest to chance. Don't make it so that it's not everything that you can control.
Well, we also have this. Bashir Tofa, June 12 actor and quintessential politician, bows out at 75.
Fine
PMB
gentleman. Governors,
Northern Elders mourn. They have that on the front page of leadership newspapers as well. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Take a look at New Telegraph next. How governors wasted 374 billion naira on unviable airport projects. Yeah. Many abandoned, others linger for years. Abia makes U-turn, says only 5% of residents travel by air. as ministry grants Edo approval. And then they've got this list of the location, status, the proposed cost. You see the first one, the Lekki Airport, work yet to start. Proposed cost is 71.64 billion naira. And the last of which being Dutse International Airport, completed, and it costs 20 billion naira. And it goes on. And then look at that, Abia Airport, project abandoned, proposed cost 40 billion naira. So
I think governors, many people see the airport as a status symbol thing. Say we have an airport. But the truth is that, you know, one of the scariest moments I had flying was the day we went to Ibadan. From Lagos, the plane takes off, and before you even know it's going down again. And it could be, for me, I don't know how the aviation experts and the pilots handle it, but it's scary for me. But then there's something called cargo airport, all kinds of things. These things can be useful if the governors don't just consider it as status symbol and opportunity to just fritter away funds. There are some states that don't need airport. If there's one in a state that is less than 100, not even 100 kilometers away, why are you building another one? Everybody just wants to have, I don't know. But then, like people say, we might not be popular with us, we might be looking at it, but the people, the locals there is a thing of joy that we have our own airport too. I mean, that's just it.
There you go.
All right. The Nigerian Tribune is next, and look at the lead story of the Nigerian Tribune. Governors to watch in 2022. Quite a list you have there on the front page. I can see there are about 15 of them here on the front page.
It's the presidency. Everybody is either president or vice president. That's what everybody is.
I don't get it. Because on this list
some
you have
first-term governors.
Exactly. You have
really
Governor Sanwo-Olu, you have Governor
How many
Makinde.
times did Jonathan run before he became president?
No, vice.
Before he became vice. So they got everyone.
Oh, are we supposed to watch them for vice presidency position too?
So many people are pushing somebody for president while they are positioning for VP and all that. There are no two governors who they say this person will run with this person. One governor is north, we run with one governor in the south, and it's all the position. You can see Ganduje. I know it's one of those being touted that if Shiwaju gets it, it might be a possible deputy. Things like that are being worked out. Somebody is saying if Wike gets it, if Tambua gets it, I might be considering Wike, and all those kind. There are so many permutations. Even
though some say that he might consider Mimiko as running mate.
So there are so many permutations going on, but of course, Yaya Bello has openly said he's running. So there's all kinds of things. So, well, I guess that's the president, unless there are other things to watch them for.
Exactly, because guys, maybe you just hold your gunpowder dry. Pages 28 and 29 will give you the details.
Yeah, but some of the governors, their states are grappling with serious security challenges that they say they've not been able to address.
Sometimes Nigeria is not that you occupy public office. That's all you need. It's not, nobody asks you whether you did well, how you
occupy till the next position comes.
They just make sure that you are once you've been held a public office before. Whether in another 10 years they bring you back, say yes, he was a former governor. Nobody bothers to ask what you achieved as a former governor, and they just throw yes, he has experience, and that's the way we operate. Nobody audits, interrogates your achievements before the next office comes.
That's the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Okay.
Well, The Guardian has this one. Legal hurdle clouds Olubadan's succession. Lekan Balogun not qualified to be Olubadan, ex-Oyo Attorney General writes. Yeah. Ladoja absent as Ibadan chiefs hold meeting at Balogun's house. Elevation of high chiefs to Obas doesn't alter Ibadan's succession process, says Olubadan in council. Page 2 will give you all of the details, and they have three major actors there, Ladoja, Makinde, and Balogun. initially they had reported, or it was reported that following the passage of the Olubadan, all eyes were on Lekan Balogun, but it looks like spanners about to be thrown in the works now. Any surprises? Because it would seem that things have not really run smoothly when it comes to the monarchy in, let's say, in Oyo State. Don't forget former Governor Jimobi and the controversy of creating many obas. But the Olubadan stool is a very old one. What do you make of this headline, legal hurdle clouds Olubadan succession? Any surprises
I
there for
actually
you?
believe that the Olubadan stool is one that has been very straightforward over the years. It's just that this issue of the beaded crowns and all that, the obas and the beaded crowns and everything about it that was introduced by late Ajimobi and all that. Now the issue, I think they said, Lekan Balogun is actually one of the elevated chiefs that are permitted to wear the beaded crown and all that. And the Ibadan law, I think one of the laws says that no Oba can become Olubadan. So if he is an Oba, at least as confirmed by his elevation to a beaded to a chief, a full chief, he cannot now become the Olubadan. That's what they are doing. But then there is also another line of argument that it shouldn't matter, that he's still one of the chiefs of the Olubadan and he's the most senior he should become. I think it's something that we have to settle. Some people have dug up the old cases. They say there's even one he has against the state government and all that. And say you can't have your cake and eat it as it were. If you want to be a chief, if you want to be a beaded crown chief, you can be that and forget Olubadan. If you want to be Olubadan, revert to throw away the chief, the beaded crown thing, and join the queue for Olubadan. But I have an idea of what he might do if I were in his position. But then let's wait and see. I think they still have a little time to sort the things over. But they are just asking the governor, tarry a while, don't install somebody yet. But that was also what they did last time. The last governor, and he installed and said, if the court removes him, I will obey the court, but let me install him instead of leaving a vacancy. This man might do the same thing. But let's wait and see.
Interesting.
Two stories here, which I'm going to quickly highlight. The choice will be yours. You have this labor unions strategize ahead of proposed fuel subsidy removal is one of the stories which is going to be big in 2022, were it to happen. You also see this one, tension in Imo as Uzodinma covers alleged sponsors of insecurity. It's a page 7 read, just in case you're interested in that story. The choice, as I did say, Mr. Nwosu, is yours. I don't know which one of them you'd like to comment on, but I'm going to leave it there for The Guardian.
From Mimo, and the issue is, unfortunately, I was waiting to see, because there was this thread that he will unveil the names, Let's see the names eventually. But we already know where he's been going towards since this crisis. He said he's either, if he doesn't name me Hedio, he names Okorocha and their group, and then the Okorocha turns around and says Uzodinma is actually the unknown gunman that Imo people have been wondering who, and all those kinds of things. But I think it's all about I'm sad to it pains me to admit that like with what the bishops and traditional rulers, they had this general meeting, and they came out with a statement, and they said specifically that what is going on Imo is just battle for political supremacy, that it's not anything about unknown. It's like every politician now has his own unknown gunmen, which they use to cause some kind of crisis. The Okorocha group is alleging that the governor is sponsoring some people. The governor is alleging that Okorocha is sponsoring. At some point, they bring Hedo into the picture. Basically, the bishops and the traditional rulers believe it is a political, a struggle for political supremacy, that's what is going on. Unfortunately, we are the grass that are suffering while the elephants are fighting. Some of us are so scared to go home. You need to go home. You need all kinds of police escort. Unfortunately, even with the police escort, you just draw unnecessary attention to yourself. And it's the whole place. So I know so many people who were so scared. I know some people who even came up to Lagos as Christmas approached. So it's that's
all these their stories goes against the narrative that the police had put up before. So one wonders when he eventually comes up with whatever it is that his position is, how he will eventually sit either with the police authorities and the people who had maintained a certain stance previously. But I guess time will tell if that time will not be today. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, nice to be here again.
Yeah, Steve Onsu is the publisher and editor of the Nigerian Express. We will be back in a moment. Do stay with us.
When we look at the year 2021 in the National Assembly, two major issues defined Parliament: the enactment of the Petroleum Industry Bill and the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Now, these two pieces of legislation caused huge disagreements in both chambers of the National Assembly and caused heated discussions in the public space. The Petroleum Industry Bill lingered in the National Assembly for more than a decade. The Ninth Assembly broke the jinx with the passage of the bill and eventual assent by President Buhari. However, it was indeed a tumultuous journey for the legislation in 2021.
What I'm asking for.
The burden of contention in the PIB was a percentage fixed for developing host communities to be derived from the operating cost of oil companies. The two chambers of the National Assembly passed the PIB, with the Senate making a provision of 3% of operating cost of oil companies for host communities, while the House passed 5%. In the harmonized report, the 3% for host communities was adopted, to the vexation of Niger Delta lawmakers in both chambers and interest groups. On August the 16th, 2021, President Buhari signed the Petroleum Industry Bill into law and has since forwarded amendments of the legislation to the National Assembly. But no legislation caused as much disagreement in Parliament and sparked discussions across the country in 2021 as the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The bill is intended to sanitize Nigeria's electoral processes. Two clauses in the bill ended up becoming the most contentious: electronic transmission of results and method of party primaries. The passage of the legislation was, however, preceded by disagreement among lawmakers over Section 52(3) of the bill dealing with electronic transmission of results. This clause caused a sharp split among lawmakers from the ruling party and the opposition, and a division was called, the first in the Ninth Assembly.
Therefore, vote yes to electronic transmission of results, because that is what Nigerians want.
I vote no, just to allow INEC to do the best job for Nigeria. Thank you.
The opposition was defeated, and the Senate amended the clause empowering the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, and the National Assembly to determine the use of electronic transmission during elections. Lawmakers in House of Reps almost came to blows debating Section 52(3), but the House eventually gave INEC the powers to determine the method of transmission of election results.
My name, On the defense.
Surprisingly, on October the 12th, the Senate bowed to public pressure and rescinded its earlier decision on electronic transmission, thereby giving electoral body INEC the power to determine the method. Both houses also adopted direct primaries for selecting candidates by political parties. This set them against governors who are in support of indirect primaries. And this ultimately reached a crescendo with President Buhari declining assent on the bill, leaving the nation uncertain as to the future of this all-important legislation. The Senate also rejected the nomination of Loretta Onochie as INEC National Commissioner representing Delta State for contravening federal character principles. The Gender Equality Bill also suffered a setback in the upper chamber, as some lawmakers said it offends their religious beliefs. The National Assembly also approved the loan request from President Buhari, running into trillions of naira, a situation which unsettled some Nigerians.
You have to listen. It's a fact. You represent the people, even if it means having a public hearing for those who are applying for this loan to come and speak about it.
The House of Representatives devoted a huge amount of time during the year to discuss the security crisis in the country. My colleague Terry Ikumi tells us more from the House.
You're absolutely correct, Linda. There was hardly a plenary day without the issue of insecurity. And to take it a step further, the House organized a special national summit on security, and that report has been submitted to the President. The House of Representatives passed bills to establish development commissions in all regions of the country. The House also passed the Climate Change Bill, as well as the controversial Infectious Diseases Bill, which stakeholders had condemned during the public hearing last year. The passage of the bill came about 17 months after the conclusion of the public hearing. Before its passage on the 21st of December 2021, here's what the Speaker had to say.
Our good faith effort from ECHA before it is transferred or transmitted at that level. The initial provision, amendment to Section 52, was made because of two considerations. One, possible manipulation and issue of data security as on the assumption that there will be automatic transmission of results even before they are announced at the polling units. Secondly, the possibility of disenfranchisement in area where there are no adequate coverage. But with the provision of Section 3, we said that irrespective of what mode of transmission that will be done, election must have been concluded at the various polling units, results must have been announced and certified by the presiding officer. It will mean, therefore, that those are two considerations that informed the necessary certification by NCC of the adequacy and security of the network will no longer be necessary. So as it were, what was done and that the amendment that was done is not to adopt what even the House of Representatives had adopted, but to make Section 52 to be subject to Section 63. So what we have now is actually transfer of election results, which may be electronically or otherwise, as may be decided by INEC, but the results must have been announced and published on the result form at the polling unit before it is done. And of course, some other issues also arose at the committee proceeding. And a part of it was the issue of the electoral, the direct primary. You know, the initial draft from the Senate adopted both direct and indirect primary. So when the bill was sent back for the committee, the Senate also adopted direct primary and also made certain necessary safeguards to ensure the a well articulated direct primary provision. I think that was what happened.
It wasn't public pressure.
What?
It wasn't public pressure.
I don't know what to mean by public pressure. You see, some of the things that people say about national legislators, at times I laugh. People who cannot even win councillorship election, they will see they are speaking for Nigerians. The only people that can speak authoritatively for Nigerians are elected representatives of the people, and that is represented in the National Assembly. So that's why, as an assembly, not assembly, we don't get ourselves to pander to even abusive tendencies of certain, those people that call themselves public commentators. How do you gauge
whether or not a bill has gone down well? If your bill is representing the true interest of Nigerians. Do senators, you're a senator, do you always have to go back home, or do you decide that, oh, I know what's best for my people, I know why I was elected, and I think I can make the best decisions on behalf of my people? How does it work?
There are two ways to it. The fact that you are given mandate by your people show that you have what they call authority, apparent authority to act and on behalf of the people that have elected you. In the context of agency law, they call it agency, that you are like the agent of your people in your constituents. And what you are doing is deemed to be done by your people. If I may use the maxim in agency law, which is quid facit per alium facit per se, he will act through another act by himself. So the first is there's a prior authorization for you to have been elected to be able to do so. And of course, you may also conduct survey. You may conduct research as an institution to know what has happened. But what you see is that at times some of those are things that people who now have a new job, they call themselves public commentators. Some of them don't even go to any constituency. They don't have anybody they relate with. They just think on the top of their head and say what they think is even not where they are invested, are representing as what Nigeria has said. Like, for instance, as a member of National Assembly, I go to my constituency a maximum 2 weeks since I've been elected in 2019. So you cannot compare me, for instance, as somebody who thinks the whole of Nigeria is just about Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, or Kano.
Indeed. I was just asking how you reach decisions and how the Senate decides, for instance, if a bill hasn't gone down well with Nigerians or if there is public outcry.
What is public? How do you measure public?
That's what I'm asking.
That's what I told you. I told you one, we have prior authorization. Secondly, two, we also conduct survey and research to determine acceptability of our bill. And survey and research, none of those people that come, for instance, to your TV station and other sister stations have facility to even conduct any form of research. People just come and think something on top of their head and represent it as what Nigerians have said. The only representation of what is Nigeria today by law, by the ground norm, is the National Assembly.
In other words, people who are able to analyze and people who are able to break down things based on knowledge, based on their expertise, their voices will count.
Democracy is not about knowledge alone. Democracy is about the people. In fact, one of the drawbacks of democracy, which you must recognize, is that even stupidity may be represented and may be the acceptable mode by the generality of the people. I'm not saying that generally people are stupid, but meritocracy is different from democracy. Democracy is what resonates with the majority of people in a society. So it is not about what elitist minority have said. And that is why constantly democracy must be renewed by subjecting people who claim like us to represent the people to go back to our constituency to get a renewed mandate after every 4 years. So people who think they have a better idea, better understanding, they should also go to the constituency, come to the National Assembly. Plato said that the highest representation of public service is to engage in politics. If you think you have a better idea about governance, also take the gauntlet, go back to your constituency and not just sit down in the confine of your office and think what is in your head is what is in the head and the concern of the average Nigerian. We relate with Nigeria on a daily basis and on a weekly basis. And so we know, and I say authoritatively, that we know what Nigerians want.
In other words, the Senate always makes the best decisions on behalf of Nigerians.
It may not be the best of decisions, but we make decisions on the aggregate of what we consider to be acceptable to the majority of Nigerians.
How do we begin to sift what is the agenda of the Senate? And the senators by themselves, for themselves, and that of what Nigerians truly want?
I don't know what you mean by this. This idea of Nigeria. You talk as if I'm not a Nigerian. I'm a Nigerian from Osogbo. I represent 10 local governments, and I go around 134 wards where they represent me. So you cannot compare me with somebody like Mr. A or Dr. A that sits in the confine of his house in Lekki and try to judge what is in the head or what is in the mind of Nigeria. So what I'm saying is that we have authorization of Nigeria to represent them, and we also act at a risk of getting rejected by the same electorate in the next election.
I do not think that, anyone is disputing the authority of that, the Senate has. But you just spoke about an elitist consensus, a minor...
Not consensus, elitist thinking of very few minority.
And some people might say that 109 is like the epitome of what you just talked about, elitist consensus. Because at the moment you become a senator, at least at the minimum, we can agree that you're a member of an elite class, aren't you?
We are grassroots people. We represent grassroots people. I'm not an elite. The elite are those ones that are drinking tea in the confines of their mansions in Lekki and Maitama. We are grassroots politicians.
Well, I'm just asking if 109 people would not be considered.
No, 109 people. You are seeing 109 people. Now, I've told you about principle of agency, which I mean said, qui facit per annum, facit per se. I'm not talking as Dr. Ajibola Bashiru as I'm speaking. I'm speaking as somebody representing about 1 million people who have been given mandate. So there's a difference between me.
Yes.
If I'm speaking tomorrow now, assuming I'm not elected again, if I come to your studio and I'm speaking, I'm just speaking maybe as a lawyer, a legal scholar, and maybe husband of my wives. But I'm not speaking as a representative of the people. And that's why when they want to write, they will say APC or so Central. I represent a constituency.
And that's what I've asked you. How do you aggregate? I mean, are you just acting on their behalf? From what you have said, it would seem that having elected you, it is that your people believe that you will know what is best for them. Isn't that correct?
I've answered your question. I said 2 areas. For the fact that I'm elected, I have authorization to speak and act on behalf of my people. Secondly, I also go to my constituency to get feedback. I will get my constituency on the streets of Oshogbo, Ilaorangun, Ora Igbomina, Igbaye, Ijabe, rather than taking feedback from national television.
Let's quickly take this to Lagos. I understand my colleague has questions for you.
Well, Senator, my understanding is that beyond just representing your constituency, every time you sit on a committee, whether as chairman or as member of a committee, you represent 200 million Nigerians, the interests of 200 million Nigerians. I think the question then would be, from what I can deduce from the question Malpa is trying to put to you, is how does the National Assembly, especially the Senate, get feedback from Nigerians?
You still assume that there's a bifurcation between members of National Assembly and Nigeria. So your question presume that we are Ghanaians or we are Canadians and that we are not Nigerians. We are Nigerians and elected representative of Nigerian people. And I told you, we go to our constituency, so we get back from our constituency, we get feedback from our constituency. I think that's, answer your question.
So get feedback from your constituency as chairman of a committee in the Senate?
I don't understand what you mean. I said I'm elected by my people. For that one, I have prior authorization to act for and on behalf of my people. I think that's suffice. Then I go to my constituency and I have their feedback. If my people think I'm not representing them very well, February 18, 2023, they get me booted out and get another person elected to represent them. It's as simple as that. That's what democracy is all about. So it's not that you go back. It's like when you have been appointed, as for instance, a presenter on this program, do you go back to Mr. John Momo to ask a question and to know what particular question you ask on that? When you are given a job and an assignment, you are presumed to have the competence and ability to be able to handle that job. And that is what is presumed when you're elected by a national legislator. I don't think your cameraman will go back to go and ask you whether you should set it to the right or to the left to be able to do so. So when you are elected as a national legislator, it is presumed you have the mandate to speak on behalf of the people.
Well, that mandate is definitely not remonstrated. But the question is, how does the Senate get feedback from the people that you represent? But we'll take that on when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Well, Senator, it will be good to know, I'm just asking a simple question of feedback, because at the end of the day, just as you said, citing the example of an employee, the Senate, members of the Senate are employees of Nigerians. And as you said very correctly, when you get a job, you are expected to do it in a particular way. But at the end of the day, for every system, there is a system of feedback. I'm just wondering, and it's a simple thing, and I believe that there should be, if there isn't, a feedback system where Nigerians can relate with members of the Senate. Okay, these are the things that we want based on this and this that we're talking about. Now, you represent your constituency, about 1 million people, you said, but you're also chairman of the Senate Committee on Media and Publicity. That's not just your representation of your constituency. You represent the Senate on that committee and consequently representing all 200 million Nigerians. So I'm just asking if there is a way that Nigerians can give the Senate feedback.
If the logical answer I will first give you now is that as I'm speaking in the studio now, and you have asked me this question, I should first go back to Oshogbo to go and ask, what answer should I give on Channels TV, this morning? That is the logical way in which I see what you have done. I've told you that I've explained the way it works in the National Assembly. I told you that aside our prior authorization by being elected, we go to our constituency to act. But when it comes to minutest details of how you act, it is presumed you have the competence. And of course, the feedback mechanism will be waiting for you at the re-election, whether you get re-elected or you get booted out by the electorate. So that's, what I would say. But to say that for every action you want to take, for every decision, you must go and take a prior authorization from anybody, I don't think I understand where you are coming from.
Well, the feedback mechanism that I was expecting is not that for every issue. It has to go in that particular way. But let's leave that one. Senator, one other issue that, has been in the news is that the Senate itself has broken the Constitution. Section 63 of the 1999 Constitution says the Senate and the House of Representatives, that's the National Assembly now, the Senate and the House of Representatives shall sit for a period of not less than 181 days in a year. But in 2021, from part of the things that we have observed, that the Senate only sat for 66 days and broke its own rules. One of the rules, Order 13.2 of the Senate Standing Rules, states that on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, the Senate shall meet at 10 a.m. and unless previously adjourned, shall sit until 2 p.m. unless before a substantive motion had been moved by the leader of the Senate or a senator acting in that capacity that this Senate do now adjourn. But along the line, we found out that the sitting of the Senate reduced from 3 to 2 in a week. How do you respond?
I didn't hear how you landed on your question. I only heard the preceding portions.
Well, the question is that simple thing that the Senate sat for 66 days in the year 2021 as opposed to 121 days recommended by the Constitution. Is there any reason for that?
No, there's a reason for that. There's COVID pandemic. And as 2020, when the COVID pandemic started, there was general lockdown in the country that we could not even sit for upward, 6 months. We are lucky that this year we'll have been able to sit. But from the beginning of this year, it was made very clear that we'll only be sitting from Tuesday on Wednesday. So if, people who talk about the Senate not sitting up to the time are oblivious of the challenge of COVID-19 pandemic, so well be it. So when you have a law and you have situation of emergency, not in contemplation of that law, I think it sounds, reasonable that you should be able, to act, timelessly. So national legislators, we need, to act within the reality of the time. It's just like telling, businesses and agencies that are to be shut down or partially shut down that have breached civil service rule by not coming to work. You know that, I don't know whether people on the level 4 to level 8 or 10 in the public service have actually even, resumed work. I know some agencies only ask, their staff to come within 2 days and 3 days. And this is not a matter of only Nigeria, only this country. Is a national, is a global, phenomenon. So if COVID-19 is not a compelling reason for us to adjust our calendar and our sitting, I think for people who think the rules have been breached, the room of the court is open so that we'll be able to have an adjudicatory position on that.
Well, Senator, does that then mean that they couldn't have virtual sittings?
We couldn't have virtual sitting. It's not yet part of what, we are provided for under our rules.
What the rule in the National Assembly was the rule reordered or edited to the effect that you can cut down on the number of days if there is no rule in the Senate for virtual sittings.
I've told you that we have acted in the light of the emergency of COVID-19, so you are free to make any deductions we have been able to do. And it has not in any way affected our delivery on our legislative agenda that we set for ourselves in 2019. We have been able to pass monumental legislations that impact positively, even from the reports read out by your correspondent before this time. So if it is the fine details of how many days you sat, or that we should be compelled to have virtual sitting, obviously, I'm sorry, I don't have any answer to give you in that regard. Suffice to say that we made it clear that we are sitting only on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And the work of national legislator is not limited to plenary. We have committee assignment, we have oversight function, and we have constituency representation work. We have to adjust our calendar administratively to ensure that we comply with the COVID-19 demands.
Well, I know you know that there will be many who will just say, well, because if Federal Executive Council, they had virtual sittings, different groups had virtual sittings, things had got to go on. So they wonder, why will National Assembly themselves, who many will expect to be the leading light, not even do anything about that? But Senator, has anything been done about such, perhaps, if another pandemic hits in the future? Is the Senate or National Assembly looking towards that rule again to ensure that the laws of the country are adhered to?
Nothing is being done yet.
Any reason for that?
I don't know. I'm not in charge of the bureaucracy of the National Assembly. I'm an elected legislator. There's a difference between the bureaucracy of National Assembly and elected representative. It's for the bureaucracy to look and determine the structure of functioning administratively of the National Assembly. It is outside my province about how the bureaucracy of National Assembly function. Perhaps your question may be directed at the clerk of the National Assembly, who is the head of the bureaucracy and administrative structure of the National Assembly.
Well, Senator, they're just being legalistic about that. We know that members can't, there's nothing wrong with members just having an information, because, you're senators, you should have all of that information, even though it's not within your purview.
Well educated as to the structure and functioning of the National Assembly.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. We can have information about engineering, even if I'm not engineering in this office, so there's nothing wrong with that. So, yes, we understand all of that point. But then, to this particular matter, when COVID hit, the House of Reps came up with this emergency stimulus bill. Many looked to the Senate. In fact, the word behind the scene was that Senate was not actually in support of that particular bill, because I think there was a first and a second one. Could you tell us what exactly happened about that bill in the Senate?
There's nothing like a Senate or House of Rep bill. It's also part of what our Nigerians need to be educated about. There are two ways by which bills are initiated in the National Assembly. That's in either of the two chambers. Either private member bill, which will be initiated by individual legislators, or executive bill, which will be introduced by the federal government, that the executive. So there's no such thing as House of Rep bill or stimulus. Maybe some members of the House of Rep or individual member had introduced a bill, and the procedure is that when the bill is introduced at a chamber, once it is passed at that chamber, it will pass to the other chamber for concurrence. So if the stimulus bill had been passed at the House of Rep, of course it will come to the Senate. It doesn't have to generate simultaneously by members of the place. So there's no such thing as Senate taking a position on stimulus bill, House of Rep taking a position on stimulus bill. It's either members of the two chambers can generate a bill concurrently. So there's no such thing as Senate bill or House of Rep bill. You have private member bill or executive bill, which are introduced either by private individual who are members of either of the chamber of the National Assembly.
Well, all of that, with due respect, many know, Senator. But the question is, we want to know why didn't it scale through?
I don't understand why the not what you mean by not scaling through. I'm not aware the bill has come before the National Assembly. That's the Senate chamber of the National Assembly. I'm not aware.
But are you aware that it passed on the House of Reps?
I'm not aware. I don't sit in the House of Reps. When they pass it, they will bring it and the leader will present it. But I'm not aware such bill has been presented. I don't monitor proceedings in the House of Representatives.
Because we ask you now, such that people will not run with the impression they had. Because when we did ask behind the scenes, there were those who thought, well, it was up to the Senate to ensure that Nigerians got something about COVID stimulus because they saw how other countries handled it. But from your perspective, were you satisfied with how the National Assembly went about the stimulus in terms of what Nigerians got, how the executive reached out to Nigerians during COVID?
Of course, there must be a distinction between legislative action and executive action. The position and the attitude of the executive, of course, is what they think should be the best in the circumstance. And to the best of my knowledge, I think in terms of intervention for SMEs, for loan, and for critical intervention in the health sector, I'm satisfied with what has been done. And I also don't think that you really need, beyond appropriation, you don't need any specific legislation to be able to address such executive action.
Well, that's a different, there are those who say, well, yes, you can, because, they saw how others handled it, because the executive cannot spend funds that has not been approved by the National Assembly. Are you suggesting that they can go ahead and give Nigerians stimulus package irrespective of what provisions may have been made by National Assembly?
I've made allusion that beyond appropriation, you don't need to make specific legislation as to stimulus package. I think that's, pretty clear that for every spending, you need to have funds to be able to do so. And of course, in case of emergencies, there is what's called service-wide vote, which gives a certain enablement to the executive to spend in case of national emergencies, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. So I believe that the service-wide vote is available for them to be able to use, and there are not extra provisions outside the context of what has been appropriated.
Your constituency gets stimulus packages for the COVID?
Of course, my constituents got stimulus packages. COVID loan, they have intervention for the small and medium scale businesses. We also have intervention also in the health area. There are direct beneficiaries from my constituency.
All right, we've got NLB joining us now. She's a convener for the Situation Room. They monitor what happens in the National Assembly. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. We're taking a look at how the National Assembly has fared this last time out. So from what you have seen, because you have a close look, Situation Room, what would your impression be?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. I'm going to, my video, I think it's better be off because it's a bit blurred, and I can't get it off. I think 2021 has come and gone, and we're now taking stock, and it's a reflective, month for us. I am happy to listen to the Honorable, the Senator, and I'm happy he also acknowledges the fact that, every segment of the population have their own responsibility. Yes, they have been elected, but there is still responsibility for the citizens. I'm convener for Civil Society Situation Room, but I'm also country director for ActionAid Nigeria. ActionAid Nigeria is working in 24 states across the country because we believe the government cannot do everything, at least as at now, the government is unable to do everything, and we are making our own, contributing our own quota. All members of the civil society situation room have distinctive contributions that are making in different parts of the country. Because we're an organization of more than 70 civil society organizations doing little things, making their contributions in the different parts of the country. And so we have the voices of people. We are citizens, and we are patriotic citizens. We are accountable citizens. We are tax-paying citizens of Nigeria. And so what we are trying to do by demanding transparency and accountability, by asking, the legislatures to do the bits that they ought to do, by putting pressure on them as well, is that we have the feelers of the people, and we are on ground. We see certain things. They too cannot be everywhere. So when we are talking to them, we talk from informed environment. And that is why we engage with them. And I'm happy that at least the legislatures, they are engaging. Parliamentarians are engaging. We meet with them, we hold meetings with them. And again, in the civil society organizations, you have different people doing different things. And so when we go to the legislature, we go to them from different perspectives. And that enhances, because there is also a turnover of people who were there, in the last 4 years and are not there this time. But let me just go straight to the point, and the one that is burning for us is the electoral amendment bill, that was passed by the Assembly.
Before you move to that point, I don't know if you heard the senator and if I understood his point. He felt that, well, he has a constituency, and as such, somebody cannot come from Lekki and claim that, well, Nigerians disagree with what he or whoever is in the Senate who also comes from a constituency has done, because from their perspective, they get feedback from their constituency. And as such, if somebody comes from somewhere and says, well, Nigerians are not happy with what they are doing, they think that that might not be a proper representation of what the situation is, because they are in touch with their constituency.
I think we are talking about Nigeria. You may be in touch with your constituency, but what is the feeling, the general feeling of Nigeria? These are people who are also working in many parts, in almost all states of Nigeria, and they bring you a feedback. Something like the bill, for example, the bill is for Nigeria. The parliament, the bills that are being passed are for Nigerians. The laws that are being passed are for Nigerians. The 1999 Constitution, the Constitution of Nigeria is for Nigerians. And we are talking about the unity of Nigerians. So when you are talking about Nigerians, we are together. If you sign that bill, it's not only for your constituency, but the whole of Nigeria. And the reason why the National Assembly has to go through what they go through is because you need the voices of everybody, which is already the representation of the people, to come together. And that is why there is reason for public hearings where you take the voices of other people, because nobody has the whole knowledge. And so when you bring it together, when you bring the voices together, you have to reason with the voices that is coming from other parts of Nigeria and look at it again. And from the civil society, we bring the contributions. We don't tell you, take what we are bringing, but reason with this. And that is why when we are looking at even the bill that we're talking about now, when we are looking at it, we say, okay, there are T's and dots here and there, take care of it. And so it's about Nigerians. And Arise, O Compatriots, is for every Nigerian. And you say, I pledge to Nigeria, my country, is for every Nigerian. Yes, you come to the National Assembly, but you are in the National Assembly to make your contributions, to also align with other parts of Nigeria. And that is why you can be a senator from Akure or from Yanagua. You can be a senator from there, but when something concerns people in Sokoto, you also have a voice there. Because you are a Nigerian, all of you have been chosen for a reason to represent the country Nigeria. But coming from the content, having a representation and the voice that comes into the bill. Because the reason why they had...
Tell us about your views about the bill.
the bill, Nigerians went home very, very disappointed, that the president did not assent to the bill, because we believe that the National Assembly did the work that they ought to do. They committed their time, they committed their energy, they had sleepless times. Look at the time they closed, this time, when we know that they ought to have gone to their constituency long before, a week before the time that they closed. But they committed their time. We thought it will be like a thank you when you go ahead and assent to the bill. Just like now, the president has even signed the budget. It has issues, but he signed the budget. But he did not consider it necessary to sign the electoral amendment bill. And if he had signed it, you can come back to the House, just like you're going to take the bill now. So for us, we are quite disappointed that the government did not sign it. We cannot blame the National Assembly at that point. Rather, we are asking the president, what he did last year. We are not happy with it. And we hope that they will do the needful in 2021, in time, in 2022, in time for, the 2023 elections. We're even hoping that, it is signed early, it has assented to early. Now it has come back to the House, which means they have to go through certain things again. We hope that the National Assembly will do it quickly, because we want any election that comes next should be better. And the election in Anambra was the last one. They were able to utilize, the new methodology that they have come, the new technology, and that technology we hope will be better. If you look at the first election in Anambra before the supplementary election, it had beavers, the beavers had problems, but the supplementary election had no problem at all with the beavers. And what he was saying, I listened to him when we talked about the collation at the polling unit, which is done and concluded at that point. And once it is done, they also transmit it. But the current electoral bill does not allow them to use that as a collation. Rather, they have to come back again and do manual collation, which allows fraud to come in, corruption to come in, and so on and so forth. Meaning that the National Assembly, from what the senator has said already, and they're supporting the fact that you need to be able to have everything that is, the voting should count. The vote of every one person should count, one vote, one count, and it's already been done now. We are hoping that when we go to Ekiti and go to Osun, that every vote will count, and the law will help us to make it count.
Are you expecting, Madam, because part of the reasons that some have also adduced may eventually arise unless addressed quickly, I even added to the direct primary issues that the president raised, are the drafting errors and cross-referencing gaps in the electoral bill, which some members of the Nigeria Situation Room also sat with a few other people to look at, and they identified 10 subheads, making 11 errors in all, beside the direct primary thing. Do you see that as a significant thing that the National Assembly should look at, or they should just go ahead and pass it as is?
I think now that they have another opportunity to look at it, they have the opportunity, and so they should take a wholesome look. Because in 2018, one of the reasons, about 3 times the president sent it back. One of it was because of errors, tiny errors. So we are asking the National Assembly now to take a look at those errors, because he has now given them the opportunity before they send it back to him. It should be addressed. It doesn't take any, it's just like the T's and the dots and all of that. I was at the conference, or the press conference, which was granted by Yaga. Yaga has sent a memo, and I'm just telling the Honorable that what we do is we take a look. We have research abilities. We have a lot of, different segments of the population, of the civil society that can do a lot of things for the interests of Nigeria. We are not claiming to be them. And that's why we're engaging with them. If we are them, we should be at the National Assembly. But the citizens, to be a citizen is the highest office of the land. When they finish from there, they are coming back to the office of the citizens. And that's where we are. And if we are patriotic Nigerians, the interest of Nigeria is paramount. And I want to assure him that we are patriotic Nigerians. You can check us out in any form at all. We were involved in the struggle for democracy in Nigeria. During the military rule, many of us were on the streets and, protesting against the military rule. Worked very hard in the democracy, in the struggle for democracy to ensure that democracy returns in Nigeria. So we are happy that democracy has returned. We want to be engaged to enrich the democratic process of Nigeria. The bill will enhance the democratic process, will open up because we believe in the law of the land. And that's why we are talking to the National Assembly. We want to be controlled by the law. We want respect for the rule of law. And we are saying, give us the law that can control, the things that we do, the proper things, and then we demand accountability that the law itself must be implemented for the benefit of Nigerians. That's why we are there. So we encourage them to look at those drafts, the drafting errors now, which will enrich, the component, the law itself, to come back to us. So we are Nigerians who are interested in Nigeria. We believe in Nigeria. If not, we will not be talking. We believe in Nigeria. We stand for Nigeria, and we are asking everybody to put Nigeria first, to stand upright for Nigeria. We are standing upright for Nigeria. We like to engage them, to work with them. If there are things we can do to make things better, to bring out more information for them so that they can take better decisions, because the quality of the decision is what we are talking about. It's not only in making the policies or making the law, but bringing out laws that can be, that we can be tested anyway. Yes.
Thank you very much for your contributions this morning. I was speaking with Eniobe, who is the convener of the Situation Room and also country director of Action Aid. Let me come to you, distinguished. You have heard her submissions and how all other Nigerians also view your work and how they see themselves coming in. Were there areas that you objected to in her submissions?
No, I think it's, the beauty of democracy is that you cannot have, like Yoruba will say, all of us cannot sleep and put our head in the same direction. So there are different diversity in terms of opinion. But as far as some civil society organizations is concerned, I would say that the National Assembly work very closely, with them, like a plaque, like the Yaga that he mentioned. And of course, there are others that you must make a distinction between serious, with respect, minded civil society organization, like our own group, and some other people who masquerade as civil society organization, but they work surreptitiously for opposition, political, party. For those self-respecting institutions and NGOs, we work very closely, with them.
Do you take feedback from them?
Of course, definitely. I participate in a lot of programs. I was at the Convergence 3.0 organized by Yaga. I was at the Roundtable organized also for on the harmonization, and I was also a speaker and discussant in many of the program. As you may know, I also have a background in civil society. I was a student, an activist. So when she talked about fighting for democracy, I was actually expelled under Decree 47 by Abacha government as a student activist. So we know the background, we fought for democracy, and we believe that we must work for democratic aspiration. And that is why some of us are concerned that the water, the baby should not be thrown away with the bathwater in terms of the work that had gone into the Electoral Act. We must ensure we have integrity of our electoral process, because there's a close connection between good governance and a transparent election and democratic governance. So as to the work that is being done by the civil society organization, I'm aware of the observation by Yaga on the typos and cross-referencing issues. It's been forwarded to me, and I forwarded it to the clerk of the relevant committee of the National Assembly. Those are positive contributions that must be commended. And of course, all of us must ensure that if it is issue of direct or indirect primary that will create a problem for all other meaningful and useful provisions in the electoral bill, we could bend backward and ensure that we get the bill passed. Because as far as I'm concerned, the bill is an advancement on the 2011 Electoral Act, and it's very necessary that we get the bill to get the necessary go ahead to be able to conduct 2023 elections.
While we wait to see what will happen in terms of how the National Assembly handles the ball of the Electoral Act, which has now been thrown back in its court, people are also wondering what will happen with the objections that the president has raised to the 2022 budget, which he passed, which he signed with objections. I do not know what the Senate makes of it and how they're going to be handling the observations which he's raised.
On the issue of the Electoral Act, options available to us is maybe 3 or 4. We could also go by way of the previous session of National Assembly and just abandon the Electoral Act. It was done in the 8th, Assembly, but we will not do that, definitely. We have done so much work on that bill. The other alternative is for us to consider the contention of the president. And as you can see, it's a 19-paragraph letter written by president, very copious, and I think on the characteristic of the president, who is very short in the use of words and very laconic in his expression. So I think the president also labored to seek to convince us that we should reconsider that decision. So that is also an option. Then the third option is to invoke subsection 5 of section 58 by passing the bill again with 2/3 majority. So those options are still on the board, but the option of abandoning the Electoral Act is certainly not possible and will not be pursued by the National Assembly. On the issue of the appropriation, the truth is that section 59 of the Constitution gave the National Assembly power to make appropriation law. Part of that is also to scrutinize what have been brought by the executive. So we are not, contrary to what they said, the jurist, Professor Sagi said, the National Assembly has no role to play. We are not just going to take in and take back what the executive had given us in terms of proposal. What we have done is to look at those provisions, look at those that are implementable, look at also the funds that have been allocated and whether that will be done. So I believe when the president come back, good enough, he has been able to, he has signed the process, but we are not bound by law to accept hook, line, and sinker whatever Mr. President brought to us as a National Assembly.
Have you seen the objections?
To the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware.
We'll leave it at that. We have to thank you so much for coming on this morning. And we believe that any time we call upon you, that you will certainly answer. We have to thank you so much for coming on this morning. Senator Jibola Bashiru is the Chairman, Senate Committee on Media and Public Affairs. Thank you for coming on once again.
Yeah, welcome to.
Well, we'll take a break at this point. So we'll come back and we'll certainly sink our teeth into another matter. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. Well, yes, as you've seen there, we've got Mr. Paul Igbenomba joining us. Yes, he is an economist and a business consultant. He's also the team lead, ProServe Options Consulting. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Well, you know, there's a World Bank report which says that in 2022, Nigeria is expected to have one of the highest inflation rates in the world and 7th highest in sub-Saharan Africa. Not data that we're happy to read out, you know, but it's a stark reality that stares us in the face. And they did also go on to suggest some short-term measures that could be adopted in the next 6 months to get us some sort of results. But, you know, when we talk about the economy, we know that different governments, this one, they've been battling for decades to get our inflation rate to a single digit. But we know where we still are today. Still a far cry from what it should be or what the targets or what they set as targets. So you've seen some of these policies implemented over time. So yes, they say you know what a bank can do by what is done before. Does that apply with economics and how we handle ourselves here?
Well,
problem with our economy, I think we know what the problems are. We know what are the key drivers of inflation in Nigeria. Essentially is the exchange rate management problem, that's one of it. Secondly is the funding of, the huge federal budget deficits, which is funded through ways and means. Ways and means essentially means monetary funding of deficit. And that means the central bank literally prints naira to fund trillions of dollars, trillions of naira of annual federal government budgets.
Is that sustainable?
That deficits. Well, it's not sustainable. I mean, ordinarily, it's okay if the government goes to the central bank to fund its deficit occasionally, all right, and in a way that is sustainable, in a way that is within recommended, ratios. For example, the annual budget deficit shouldn't exceed 5% of the GDP, all right? But ours, I think this year probably 5.7 or thereabout. So when government funds its deficit through ways and means, through monetary funding, that's through central bank printing of naira, it puts huge pressure on inflation rate, and also by extension on exchange rate. If that is done occasionally and done in a way that is sustainable, in other words, it's not so huge, it's okay. But when it becomes an annual recurring event and in huge values of trillions of naira, it then constitutes one of the huge pressures, one of the major sources of pressures on interest rate, on inflation, on the exchange rate, on interest rate.
Let me ask you this broad-based question. What is it about the economy? Why does it appear as though, we can't seem to place our finger on it and address its issues?
Well, the economy is not really, the management of our economy really is not rocket science. Agreed, it's not, ABC or like a cup of tea. But at the same time, there's nothing that has happened in the last few years that are so extraordinary, so unusual, that it's not happening elsewhere in the world, all right? So the basic problem with our economy and its management is the policy options, or the lack of it, of the government. And basically, one of the thematic aspects of this regime is populism. In the management of the economy is just one word: populism. All right, trying to please people, sound popular. This aspirational, way of saying, well, we don't want people to suffer, quote unquote. All right. But see, the best way to help the people and the poor is not by controlling prices. And that's essentially what government is doing, because if you look at it, what they're doing is controlling prices.
How?
Either of exchange rate or of PMS, that's petrol price, all right? And when you control prices, that doesn't really help the economy.
So what steps?
So the best way to manage an economy, manage a free enterprise economy, is to allow market forces to determine prices.
So what key steps?
Hold on. And so what government does essentially is to just provide the enabling environment and the right policies, so that people let economic actors be the one to make decisions. And so through interplay of supply and demand forces, and when you say supply and demand, actually you're referring to individual actors who are coming to the market either to supply or to buy and sell based upon the information they've had, which is in line with their desire to either make a profit or to maximize their own consumption benefits. So what I'm saying is this. It is economic actors either as buyers, either as entrepreneurs, investors, suppliers, producers, who are in the best place to make decisions that can influence prices.
Okay.
And give you a price that is realistic and that will make, every sector, every market to operate optimally.
So,
but when government intervenes because it wants to help the masses, they don't want people to suffer, it disrupts the whole...
So what are those interventions that you're speaking about?
It destroys the whole market mechanism.
Yeah, tell us about those
problems.
interventions that you are referring
For example,
to that makes them control price.
The price of petrol. All right? That's a price ceiling. That's price control. Of course, we know it's not entirely that simple. It's not as if government really wants to control prices. I mean, there's a whole lot of political pressure, all right, and resistance from labor and from some other stakeholders. But you see, we've been on this petrol subsidy thing for so long, all right? So it is time Nigeria had, well, that's Nigeria, all of us, the government, takes a decision to really solve that problem. Well, thank God we have the PIA, the Petroleum Industry Act has provided for that. I mean, all right? I mean, so now, government is committed. I mean, government has no choice, or we have no choice. If we want to obey that act, then sometime this year, probably before the second quarter of this year, the petrol subsidy would have been removed. Okay, but it is coming almost too late. It's coming so close to election. So that in itself will create problems. But we didn't have to wait for the PIA to actually address the issue of petrol subsidy.
So what would you say to someone who listens to you, who's listening to you and thinks, okay, well, if you say they are controlling prices in that sector, talking about deregulation and things like that, oil prices, what about the food and beverage industry? Look at the prices of foodstuffs out there. It's over the roof. Are they controlling prices there?
Well, government is not controlling prices of food and all that. But that's the irony. If you really want to help the people, all right, you should be trying to control price of staples so that people don't suffer.
Oh, so they can control some prices.
That is what the people really, spend their money on, all right? But you want to control the price of PMS, which the masses don't really consume in huge quantity. The people that benefit from...
How did you come to that conclusion?
Hold on. The people that benefit from fuel subsidy are largely the rich, the middle class, those who own cars, and the rich. Now, the current World Bank study, the Nigeria Development Update, NDU, of November, okay, came out with a report that only 3% of the poor benefits from petrol subsidy. Only 3%. So, which means that 97% of petrol subsidy benefits the rich and the middle class, and benefits business people, smugglers,
in other words,
illegal and criminal operators.
If that is the case, sir, how come the labor unions kick against PMS?
They're only just an ideological fixation. That's just it.
What does that mean?
That means that they just feel that petrol price should go up because it's our, it's our right. We produce petrol. It's our benefit. Why should our people suffer and pay a higher price for petrol? It's just an ideological fixation. It has nothing to do with economic sense of reality. Because if the behavior and attitude and position of labor is based on reality, it will be data-driven. It's not data-driven. The facts are there, and the empirical evidence, that's the facts are there. Only 3% of the poor in Nigeria benefit from petrol subsidy.
We've been talking about this, just as you said, we've been talking about this removal of petrol subsidy for quite a while now.
For decades.
Exactly. Now, if it's as you say, how come all of the economists, all of the governments from one government to the other have not been able to convince Labour to look at this realistic data that you say?
You see, actually, the way I say it is insufficient political will to manage this issue. It can be managed. For example, if a company realizes, a management and the board realizes that this company will go under if we don't downsize and send some people away, all right? What would they do? They just have to do the right thing. But then in doing it, they do it with a human face. You give those people who have to go a handsome handshake, all right, and a soft landing. So you can negotiate with Labour, you can negotiate with any group of stakeholders who are opposing. It's a matter of how you negotiate and what you do to them. What's important is that at the end of the day, all stakeholders are happy, okay? So now, what is being proposed, which is realistic, is that 3,000, some money will be given to some selected, targeted poor people when the petrol subsidy is removed. Well, that makes sense. Though the issue of how you do it is a question, but it can be done.
In other words, you're saying that they should go ahead and remove it. After all, it's only 3% of the population that benefit from it. Then whether or not the prices go high or not, it's just 3% of the people.
You see, we don't have any choice. Otherwise, this economy can go under. We'll have a public finance crisis that of such a huge dimension that will just affect everything. So government has no choice now but to remove the petrol subsidy. But then what they can do in the short term is to determine categories of population of the poor who you give some cash transfers to mitigate the effect on them.
Just the same 3%?
Well, not necessarily the 3%, but
why give 3% if you say it's only 3% that benefit from fuel subsidy?
No, absolutely. Research shows that only 3% of the poor benefit, all right? But when government is not determining who and who, it will be people of a certain level of income level.
That's why
of a certain income level. It's not going to be so straightforward, but that is what they will do, and that's what we should do. Of course, there are other ways. You can provide vehicles, give transporters opportunity to buy vehicles at a subsidized rate and all that. There are many things government can do.
But Mr. Gwenova, I think that data needs to be interrogated.
No,
because
that is the reality.
Just a minute, because the thing is, I mean, which part or sector of this country's economy, small shops, lock-up shops, SMEs, don't power their generator? We all know we don't have power supply, uninterrupted power supply. So everybody will power all of those things. The small industry, the small shops, whatever is it out there, they rely on fuel supply to run or power. Services rely on that. So how is it that we say only the rich benefits from this?
Those SMEs you're talking about, they are not the poor, quote unquote. They still are able to make a profit and make ends meet, all right? They are not the real poor. But
so who are the poor? The person that fries akara, what do they work with then?
Even the woman that fries akara, it's not the typical poor because they really make money.
So who is
we have none of women who train their children to university through frying akara. All right? The real poor, ironically, most of them don't even live in the urban areas. They live in rural areas, and most of them don't use transportation.
Now, to try to move forward now, Mr. Gwenova, there are a number of recommendations which my colleague referenced earlier that the World Bank is making.
Yes.
One of them is the one that you've just spoken about, which is removing this fuel subsidy thing, which, of course, a good number of people are still wondering how government is going to get that done. But there are a number of other recommendations that have been made along that line. So one is just wondering here now how those things are going to play out, especially in favor of the economy of the nation. For instance, we talk about reducing inflation through a coordinated mix of exchange rate and all of those things.
Exactly. Now,
So,
hold on. Now, you discover that fuel subsidy impacts inflation heavily. All right? It's a great source of I mean, it impacts government spending. It leads to the huge budget deficit, which is financed through ways and means, through monetary funding by central bank. That's printing of naira. Those trillions of naira of annual printing of naira puts a huge pressure on inflation. That's one. Two, the control of exchange rate. That's another price control. The way the central bank manages the exchange rate are not allowing free market forces to determine the exchange rate.
What should they do?
It's a price control, all right? And that price control, you see, when you control prices...
No, what should they ideally do?
Just let me tell you, when you control price, and the price you are set is below the price that will encourage suppliers, supply reduces, all right? So in this manner, now, the price control in the foreign exchange market has led to the drying up of inflow of dollars. Essentially, that's because the official rate, now the current official rate is about, as at the end of last month, of December 31st last year, was 435 naira to a dollar in the official NAFEX market, all right? But in the black market or parallel market, it was 560. So there's a huge premium.
Yeah, but as we wind down, tell us, Mr. Gudaba.
And because of those two rates...
Talk about solutions. What should they do that they've not done?
The solution is, like I said, allow market forces to determine prices either in foreign exchange market, either in PMS, as well as...
Concerning the dollar exchange rate.
The ideal thing is for government acting to central bank to, as quickly as possible, transit to a free market. Let NAFEX be a free market so that the central bank will stop the intervention. Once there's a free market, you discover that the gap between the official exchange rate, the NAFEX rate, and the parallel market will collapse. And the difference will not be more than, ideally, 5%. And once that happens, I can tell you, you will see a huge inflow of dollars. You see foreign direct investment coming in huge numbers. You see portfolio investment, those who invest in the stock market, coming. That's how it was years ago. And once that happens, the naira will stabilize and will even improve. And so the inflationary pressure from the foreign exchange market will reduce to the barest minimum. And now, talking about government subsidy, the reason why government is spending so much money is because government is doing things that it shouldn't be doing. That's because government is not willing to privatize. If government privatizes, for example, the power sector, for example, government has no business, spending huge amount of money. Privatize the sector. Let that.
Well, I thought we've done
no.
some privatization in that sector.
That was done before this regime came in. Right now,
it's still government.
Right now, there are about 10 power plants in the Nigeria power plants that are stranded. Those plants were to be privatized in 2014. They have still not been privatized. If those plants are privatized, and then other foreign investors coming to build new plants, that will take care of our power supply. But government isn't allowing that. So that's why they spend too much money in the power sector. So what I'm saying briefly is that privatize the economy and therefore reduce government spending on things that can be done by the private sector.
Mr. Gudaba, I know that...
and that will minimize your need to borrow excessively.
We're out of time because there's several areas that need a lot of clarification and interrogation of some of the issues you raised about portfolio investment and dollar rate will drop if CBN hands off certain things. We've seen these things before, how people will still clamor. Wait, let them rein in these figures because, look, if you don't address manufacturing, how you, but look, that's just how far we can go, unfortunately.
The
we need to go, Mr.
sorry, the summary of it is that.
Yeah, we already had the summary, pardon me. Really sorry about that. Mr. Paul Igbonoba is an economist and a business consultant, team lead of ProServe Options Consulting. Thank you very much indeed for your time today, sir. Well, we'll now have to go ahead and take your comments in just a moment.
Yeah, Jare Tiamiyu, has this one. 109 persons should not be thinking that they are the authority over the 200 million people. If they think they have the final say, as Senator opined, why did they reverse many of their resolutions after public outcry? Many of them don't visit their constituencies in 6 months. The senator or rep member is not the island of knowledge. They should also be considering those with higher experiences and knowledge about matters.
Festus Akimboye says, while 2021 is an action-packed year in our National Assembly, which culminated in the passage of the PIB, which has now become law, and the Electoral Amendment Bill, which unfortunately has now been tossed by the President, National Assembly failed to press government on many of its decisions and actions, especially in the area of borrowing. We want to see a National Assembly that will be bold to quiz government and take feedback from Nigerians in 2022.
Well, Onwe Chijioke has this one, saying to mitigate the cost of governance, one can only say that each state in the country should provide one senator and a House of Representative member. I'm still wondering how all the members of National Assembly will pass an electoral bill full of mistakes and contradictions as detected by the CSOs.
Okay, well, seeing this is from Dad Matilda. Oh, okay. What it says, if National Assembly members are asked to really go to their constituencies and have an ideal town hall meeting with their constituents, a large number of them will return to Abuja with a vote of no confidence. But when they say they met with their constituents, what they mean is that they have met with grassroots members of their parties and not the public. Getting feedback from the people should be made easy in a way that the internet can be used as a channel. In fact, most of these legislators' constituency offices are deserted buildings. So there you go.
Thank you very much for your feedback. At least we have a feedback mechanism open, and we hope to have it open throughout this year. Never mind that some of them have been closed. You have made use of Sunrise Daily at channelstv.com. We will always take your feedback, as many of them as we can. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
I'm Train Balanusa. Goodbye.